So even if you weren't raised that, you may still have been affected by the guilt cycle that those religions create. The dissonance is powerful because you do it and you feel guilty. What do you do with that? You have to go confess and come back to that particular religion. So it's almost always a sex-negative environment, and all the major religions have learned to use that. You know, a lot of religions use food taboos, like Hindus and Jews. Some with Catholics, Protestants use it as much. But that's not as popular because it doesn't work as well. Sex is the best one anybody's found out yet. So the God virus has moved in that way. Now, one of the last things I want you to read helps your marriage. Yeah, I was taught that real early on. Bring Jesus in your marriage, you have a good marriage. Well, what's the least married and most religious group in the United States? Besides Catholic priests and nuns. Least married and most religious group in the United States. Black women. Think about that. Black women are by far more religious and less married than any other group in the United States. Well, if Jesus helps your relationships, what's going on there? What's the highest divorce rate among all groups in the United States?
Gay.
No? Evangelicals and Protestant fundamentalists. The highest divorce rate in the United States is among Baptists and evangelicals. You can almost look at the states with the highest divorce rates are the states with the highest number of Baptists, Southern Baptists, and evangelicals. Where's the lowest divorce rate in the United States? Massachusetts, that has the highest number of atheists in it. I don't think there's a coincidence here. It's still a correlation study, but what's going on there? Isn't that interesting? If Jesus helps relationships, then you'd think blacks would be the most happy in their marriage relationships, and evangelicals would have the lowest divorce rate. It's not true. So I want to blow some myths out of the water and start asking some tough questions of people. Why do you folks have these high divorce rates? Baptists hate for you to ask those kind of questions, by the way, so be careful. All right, so viral comparisons. Let's just look at our little checklist here. Biological viruses have horizontal infection strategies, and so do religions. We see the vertical infection strategies through some viruses, as well as some religions. All religions, just about. Most easily infected when you're young by both viruses and by God viruses. Susceptible during stress, yes, both. Highest in the immune system, yes. May use a vector, yes. Evolves keys to penetrate, yes. We see the swine flu evolving constantly to try and keep ahead and infect more people. Well, religion does the same thing. And the great example is, have you noticed that 72% of all the annulments given by the Catholic Church are granted in the United States, where only 3% of Catholics live? Wonder what's going on there. If they didn't do that, they wouldn't have any members. They wouldn't be getting any money. The Baptists had the same problem. If you get divorced in the Baptist church, they were virtually ostracizing you and throwing you out. And what they finally realized was, if you throw everybody out that's divorced in the Baptist church, you're not going to get any more money in. You know, the church is going to die. So they've tried to change their tune. Religions are constantly evolving, just like biological viruses are constantly evolving. They have to, in order to stay ahead of the culture. I talk a lot about it. Remember, the subtitle of my book is called How Religion Infects Our Lives and Culture. I think the culture part is as much as anything, but in talks like this, I think people are more interested in the personal application, so I don't talk about the culture stuff. So we can see that sex may facilitate, and I firmly believe religion is a sexually transmitted disease as much as HIV is. Think about all the sex that religion is consumed with. Something's going on there. So when you start reframing it that way, it starts making sense. All right, well, I need to wrap this up, so I'm going to skip a few things, and I'm going to talk real briefly. Whoa. Fortunate to have a group started here in San Diego. Debbie and Gary have started Recovering from Religion. It's a group I started almost exactly a year ago, because I started realizing after I published the book, it first came out, there's a lot of people out there who need help getting over some of the crap they were dealt with in their childhood and other things. And I started this group, announced it one day, and 11 people showed up. I was shocked. I gave 1 week's notice and 11 people show up. We now have 3 groups in Kansas City. We've got 20 groups throughout the United States, everywhere from Nashville to San Diego, from New York City to New Orleans. We've got groups everywhere. And they're meeting once a month. And anywhere from 5 to 10 people come together and they're talking. And when you get a Mormon, an ex-Mormon, an ex-Catholic, an ex-Baptist, we even have an ex-Mooney in one of ours. And, yeah, he was raised a Mooney. And you get them all talking. And they start looking at each other. And the Catholic says, wow, I felt the same thing and you're a Baptist. And the Baptist looks at the Mooney and says, wow, I felt the same thing and you're a Mooney. It shows them the power of the God virus. It infects in the same way, regardless. It's just like there's 200 rhinoviruses. Well, there's 200 religions too. They all infect you in a slightly different way. So each religion has its own way of infecting you and bringing you back to their particular religion through the guilt cycle and other ways, of course, as well. So I would just encourage you to talk to Debbie, talk to Gary, and at least learn more about it. We've got some propaganda, some information up here on Recovery from Religion. We've got a great website with all sorts of resources. If you know somebody that needs that kind of help, it's like AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous. Only what we found is if you take God out of it, you only need 10 steps. Not a 12-step program. And we only say that partially tongue-in-cheek. But it is so rewarding to be in these meetings and hear people talk about how they're getting over their sexual guilt and how they're dealing with their in-laws who are fundamentalists. And what do I do about raising my child? They're 10 years old now. I raised them as a Christian. Now I'm an atheist. What do I do? These are real life issues that this is the purpose of this meeting. That's the purpose. And we're not here to compete with the free thinkers or the humanists. In fact, we think a lot of people are coming into their recovering from religion and then moving on out into the free thinkers groups. But free thinkers groups are not dedicated to helping people deal with these real life issues about getting out of religion. That's why I founded it. And every group so far that we founded, I've seen, with the exception of San Diego, because they're not been around long enough, I've seen people leave, move from the recovering religion group into the free thinkers. These are people who were just religious 6 months ago, or religious a year ago, but they can't imagine calling themselves atheists. When I was growing up, my grandmother said Madame Marie O'Hare, the founder of the American Atheists, was worse than the devil. And I said, Granny, how can anybody be worse than the devil? Well, at least the devil believes in God. So that's the training I got, and to this day I still have to think Madame Marie O'Hare is not a bad person, it's not the devil. But that's the kind of crap that people are having to deal with. That's a funny thing, but it's not funny when somebody comes into us. He's now an atheist. He was an evangelical before. He's married to a woman who's still evangelical, and they're thinking about having children. Okay, now that's a real human problem. We don't have the answers, but we've sure got ears to listen to, and that's what we're for. Well, I hope you'll take some information and find out about it. San Diego is big enough to have 3 or 4 or 5 groups of recovering from religion, so I hope you don't think that Debbie and Gary are the only ones that can do this. If you're interested, talk to me, talk to Debbie, go to one of their meetings. If the meetings get strong enough and big enough, we'll split them off and do some more groups. That's what we've done in Kansas City. Thank you for coming.